I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Moments ago, Senate Republican leaders held their weekly press briefing. Led by Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, the GOP leaders slammed President Biden over Title 42. The Trump-era policy permits the Border Patrol to limit the number of asylum seekers due to health concerns associated with COVID-19. Republicans argue it will be disastrous if the Biden administration lifts Title 42. Let's listen in.
First, I was pleased to see that Secretary Austin said when he was in Kiev Sunday that our goal in Ukraine is to win. The administration's had a very hard time explaining what the end game ought to be here, and the end game ought to be for Ukraine to win, and we ought to do everything we can to help them. I do think the administration is stepping up its game. Better late than never. But we need to bear in mind that the goal here is for the Ukrainians to win. Secondly, with regard to Title 42, I think I'm safe to say Senate Republicans are going to insist on having an amendment to Title 42. This is extremely important. The border is already entirely too open. Pulling back the Title 42 authorities will only make it dramatically worse. And so I want to make it clear to you and to the Majority Leader that we'll need to have a Title 42 vote at some point here, in all likelihood, on the COVID package.
The only viable American energy policy is an all-of-the-above energy policy, and that includes conventional, traditional energy sources, clean energy sources. It includes nuclear and hydro and natural gas and biofuels. And just to be fair, the administration finally, and I say emphasize finally, has agreed to the year-round usage of E15. That's a decision that could have been made some time ago, but it's one that makes complete sense in light of where we are in this country right now with respect to energy. And if you think about the contribution that E15 can make at a time when gas prices are through the roof, it can lower the overall price for liquid fuels because it trades lower than traditional gasoline. It obviously supports Midwestern agriculture. It helps reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It is a win-win, and particularly now when we're looking for more liquid fuels in our fuel mix in this country. So I'm pleased at least that the administration has recognized that, but I think it kind of scratches the surface of the contribution that biofuels can make to the energy policy in this country. And again, I would simply say that as we think about what consumers are heading into, farmers starting to put their crops in the ground, input costs are at an all-time high. One of the biggest ones is fuel, whether that's diesel for farmers or gas as people, we get into the summer season, the driving season in this country. And we need to be looking for everything that we can do to lower the costs. It's a big contributor to the 8.5% 40-year high inflation that we are seeing in this country. And the best way to combat that is with an American energy strategy that is an all-of-the-above energy strategy that restores and returns America to energy independence.
We have a dangerous national security crisis at our southern border, and it's about to get a lot worse. And this is all of President Biden's making. When he came into office, he rolled out one executive order after another, which was rolling out the red carpet for illegal immigrants to come to the United States. We're at a point now where over 2 million illegal immigrants have come to the United States, and that's more illegal immigrants in 14 months under Joe Biden than under 4 years with President Trump. And if President Biden rolls back and takes off Title 42, it's going to get a lot worse. And it's not just the issues of the numbers. It's also the fact of who many of these people are in terms of criminals, drug dealers, gang members. And if you're on the foreign terrorist watch list, this is a dream come true for you in terms of an opportunity to get into the United States illegally. Well, this is such a serious crisis that even a number of Democrats are turning against the president. They are running away from the policies, running away from the president, and a lot of them are people who are running for re-election because they know that this policy of eliminating Title 42 is not just unsafe for the nation, it's also very unpopular. We know that the president has turned over his immigration and his border policies to people many whom don't believe we ought to have borders in this country. People in his administration, including the Vice President of the United States, who ran for president at a point calling to eliminate immigration and customs enforcement in America. We know what we need to do to secure the borders. Apply the laws as written. Finish building the wall. Keep the Remain in Mexico policy and maintain Title 42. Title 42 is about public health and safety for the American public. And on this topic, the president is speaking out of both sides of his mouth. On one side, he says that COVID is so bad he asked for $25 billion of additional money for COVID. At the same time, he says, oh no, COVID is behind us in terms of the border, so we can open the border to more illegal immigrants. For people who think that, like I do about this policy, that we're in a dangerous situation at the border, under Joe Biden, it's going to get a lot worse very soon.
Well, along with the border, the top political issue I think we can expect over the next several months is inflation. You know, President Biden started with inflation at 1.4%. Now it's 8.5%. The highest inflation number under President Trump was 2.9%. That's a one-month number, 2.9% in what was a very robust economy. The highest inflation number under President Obama was 3.4%. And by the way, the producer inflation index is up to double digits and has been since December. That's usually an anticipation of what's going to happen just a little bit down the road. You know, the Democrats said that their energy policies and their excessive spending policies, first of all, they said they wouldn't cause inflation. Then they said, well, there's inflation, but it'll only be temporary. And now they're saying if we spend more money, somehow that reduces inflation. You know, it's baseball season. Sounds like to me that's 3 strikes. And 3 strikes on an issue this big, you probably should be out.
This past 2 weeks, I had the great pleasure of traveling across the state of Iowa doing the 99-county tour. I got about 20 counties done, a number of town halls, visits to manufacturers, and so forth. And the number one issue that I heard from our farmers, those manufacturers, the ag producers, was inflation. Iowans are really feeling the hit of inflation, and yet what we see here in Congress and in the White House is the continued level of federal spending that continues to fan the flames of inflation. We know that the Democrats need to slow down on the federal spending and get our economic house back in order. So again, those Iowans are really hurting when we talk to them in their places of business out on Main Street in Iowa. They have never seen anything like this, and it's really hitting their bottom dollar. One of the other issues that they're talking about as well is the fuel costs. You know, our farmers are going into the fields now, and those costs have gone up significantly. The inputs are horrifying to them as they continue to try and feed and fuel our nation and the world. So those farmers are really, really concerned about what's going on with fuel. Those that have to drive distances, they're concerned about it. And of course, President Biden, he wants to blame it on the Russia invasion of Ukraine. And that's simply not the case. And Iowans know and understand that this price of fuel has been going up since President Biden took office. So it's not all on Putin. It's on our policies where we have ramped down on American energy and American innovation. So easy solution, folks. We need to really tap into our American energy resources, put Americans to work, and let's right the ship here. So again, 2 top issues: inflation across the United States, as well as our fuel prices. The Democrats have got to get it together.
Last week, I had the opportunity to go to Europe and meet with NATO and U.S. military leaders at Ramstein Air Force Base. They want to provide all the resources they can to make sure Ukrainian military can defeat Russia. So they're hoping that all of the elected leaders in the NATO member countries will do the right thing and make sure they're able to provide all the lethal weapons they can. I went to Poland. You really have to appreciate the Polish people. One, all these individuals, millions of people have come into Poland. They're not in refugee camps. They're in people's homes. I went to see a lot of the refugees. It's almost all moms and kids. And thank God for the Polish government. They've said, we're going to provide you the resources. You can get on our safety net programs. There's a short-term program that the United Nations has put in place that gives, I think, a typical Ukrainian citizen about $140 a month for 3 months. But people are showing up in Poland. But in Poland and in Lithuania, where I went, they're expecting NATO to show up. They know that Putin is a thug. He's willing to kill innocent moms and kids and grandparents, clear the military. So they know they have to rely on NATO. They know we all have to work together. We already have troops in Lithuania. The Lithuanian government has put up the money to provide the resources to make sure our troops can stay there. They want them there permanently. They know that their safety is 100% tied to their membership in NATO. So the expectation in Europe is that America will show up, we'll do our job. The Biden administration has to show up and do its job and do it every day, and don't be slow about it.
Elon Musk, it was announced yesterday, purchased Twitter. Some of your colleagues on the other side of the aisle have already come out and said that that's a danger to democracy. Antitrust laws need to be put in place to stop sales like this. Your reaction that Elon Musk has purchased Twitter?
An incredible event. It'll be interesting to see what impact it has on the way Twitter operates. But we're all watching it with a great deal of interest because there's certainly been our share of complaints about the way it's been run in the past.
Leader McConnell.
What are the chances of a deal on a top-line spending number for the regular appropriations process? And can you provide us any update on any talks that may have taken place?
Yeah, well, the big four of the appropriations have been in discussions about that. We hope to be able to reach an agreement so we can have at least some semblance of a normal appropriations process, which hadn't happened around here very often.
Leader McConnell, do you have any concerns over the fact that Kevin McCarthy so publicly lied about what he said right after the January 6th insurrection?
Well, I can tell you that I addressed that issue at length on 2 occasions on January 6th and again on February 13th.
Would you have any concern about how much?
Can you provide any updates on the USICA conference negotiations with respect to motions to instruct?
I'm having a hard time
Can
hearing.
you address the USICA conference negotiations? Any updates?
Yeah, well, we haven't started yet. We have to deal with motions to instruct, and I believe the majority leader may have told you we're probably not going to do that this week, but we're prepared to name the conferees on our side and to move into organized motions to instruct, period, whenever he wants to turn to it.
The U.S. the Commission on International Religious Freedom basically released their report today and talked about the regression for international religious freedom, such as in Afghanistan. Is it somewhat disappointing that after all these years, is the Biden administration to blame for this regression in religious freedom in Afghanistan?
Well, they're certainly to blame for the precipitous withdrawal from Afghanistan, which obviously seems to have made it possible for the Taliban to resume their previous behavior. And I said at the time and say again today, it was a mistake to withdraw from Afghanistan. We hadn't been in combat in Afghanistan in a number of years. The Taliban was not in power. Women were being treated appropriately, and it was costing very little as a percentage of our overall defense budget. We shouldn't have left in the first place.